Of Locked On Sports Atlanta on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Hawks Postcast, your home for the best Atlanta Hawks talk. It's quick hitting, local insight after every game. You can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me is NBA and college basketball analyst DeShaun Tate. The Hawks Postcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. So the Hawks fell 128-125 to the New York Knicks at home tonight. We'll talk about the turning point that saw a comeback by the Hawks fall short, and we'll talk about our takes on how the Hawks couldn't get it done, why they couldn't get it done again tonight. And this has been a familiar refrain for us, DeShaun, because we've been talking about, unfortunately, loss after loss after loss with the Hawks this past what are we up to? Six straight losses now. And for tonight, however, it felt a little bit different. And I don't know that it felt a little bit different just because the Hawks actually mounted a comeback and fought to the bitter end. But it did feel a little bit different in terms of why they weren't maybe able to complete the comeback. And for you, you said that your take was it's not just about how you start.
And it wasn't, Tenitra, because, I think it's pretty obvious to see that this is a Hawks team that we've talked about so many different things between quarters, and if it ain't the third quarter, it's how they started, and if it ain't the first quarter, it's how they finished, and one thing after another. One thing that I don't think really helps this team very much is the fact that they still don't have the identity. And I know that we'll talk about that in a whole different show where we can really deep dive in on it a little bit more, because I do still think it's lacking, even when there's other teams that are not nearly as good or have nearly as good of a record as the Hawks, or whatever the case may be. I'm still just feel somewhat decent about the fact that those are teams that have identities. And because the Hawks don't, I don't get a great feeling about what that looks like in terms of upward trajectory moving forward for the team. Going into that, now we have to have a conversation about a half where I don't think necessarily about the Hawks just didn't flat out play good, but it's just so night and day between the first half and the second half.
Yeah.
Seems like they realized who they got in front of them in the second half. Kind of a little bit of a wake up, and too often of times do I think that this happens when they're in positions where they have to try to make comebacks and, storm back and cut deficits and things of that nature.
Yeah.
That's just as far as how you start. I want to wake something up and really have a conversation about who you start.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's very ideal and wise to put into a position Zachary Risachet to remain in this starting lineup. I think there's a situation where you maybe try to somewhat go big a little bit. And if you know that Trey and Jalen Johnson without question is going to be your guy, and you have to have a defensive guy on the perimeter for sure to guard, in most cases, the opposing team's best player, that's probably going to be Dyson Daniels, just because Nickeil Alexander-Walker gives you so much more of a scoring punch off the bench. I think that you move Jalen Johnson into the 3 position and maybe just try and take a flyer on your rookie, on Asa Newell. I mean, at some point in time, right, you gave Zachary Risachet the flexibility, the comfortability to ease his way in as a rookie, to make adjustments and all these other things. He has not been cutting it this year, and there's no more time for having conversations, albeit, again, for a number 1 pick. No matter how you slice it, dice it, shape it, or mold it, you need more contribution. You need more production. You're not getting that. I'm taking a chance on a guy who I feel confident at least to get a shot, and has shown that when he can get in the ball game, that he can make some things work on both sides of the ball, and some things that I feel confident that I can count on within him. Just want to get your thoughts, but I think there needs to start there. That will give me the sense of our head coach giving me the feel that there's a no nonsense. I just want to put my best guys on the floor that's ready to play and win immediately.
Could not agree with you more. Like, literally, when I look at Zachary Reese-Sachet's numbers, and granted, he's averaging almost 11 points a game, but that's, if you take the month of December, I would say you would get otherwise. But overall, averaging 11 points a game, but we haven't seen that. 4 points tonight in 19 minutes, you're a starter. That's not going to cut it. 4 boards, that's not going to cut it. I mean, I'm looking at him and I'm thinking to myself, it almost feels like every game we just keep seeing him disappear more and more. And I'm not really sure why Quin Snyder is, I don't know, wedded to keeping Zachary Reese-Sachet in the lineup. I mean, if he has to come off the bench, he just has to come off the bench. And
so be it.
Yeah, I mean, and if you want to give him heavy minutes off the bench and kind of build him back up or whatever, that's fine. And maybe sometimes players are playing and they're not 100% and we don't actually know all of that. So maybe that's what it is. But sometimes I don't think injury has anything to do with feeling like you disappear in the game. I think that's a mindset. And I just don't see that killer instinct, that instinct of saying, hey, I'm on this court as a starter for this team. I have to be better than that. Like, I have to be able to contribute more than 4 points. I mean, why aren't we talking about Zachary Reese-Sachet averaging a double-double? Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be a Jalen Johnson type 20 points, 12 rebounds type. It can be a 10-10 type of double-double, but at least I would know that you were contributing on a consistent basis at both ends of the court. And so, yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Like, sometimes you got to do a little bit of shakeup to the lineup if it's not working. And I don't think Zachary Reese-Sachet coming in as a starter is working for this team any more than my take on it, which is, and listen, I want to give a caveat of, this show has never been about trade. This show has never been about he's trash. This show has never been about get rid of him. Nope, not how we operate. Still don't believe that. Mm-hmm. However, I do think that there are moments in a game where you have to make a decision as a coach on who should and should not be there, regardless of that player's cachet. So for me, the take was Trae Young should have had a seat. Like, there's no way Trae Young should have been in this game in those waning seconds. I had a problem with that. I just really did. Because when we look at the final plays, if you will, and we look at the turnover and the fact that he was trying to push to kind of get the ball to Jalen Johnson, if you will, mm-hmm. It's like, again, I go back to, I don't know, maybe Trae's not 100%. And mm-hmm. I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. But since you know Trae's the type of guy, just because of his DNA, mm-hmm. who's going to push even when he shouldn't push the envelope, maybe that's an opportunity, Quin Snyder, for you to say, this isn't the time that Trae Young should be on the court. I just felt like what did you expect to happen? Like, that might have been a moment where you look at who gives me the best opportunity to have a defensive possession in my favor. And I just didn't feel like that last possession, like Trae Young being in there, gave the Hawks the best defensive possession that they could have had. I mean, the Hawks were up by 1 and lose this game by 3. And again, I have no problem with Trae being in there most of the game. He played 31 minutes. That's fine. They may have him still on a minutes restriction, if you will. But if you do have him on a minutes restriction, maybe that would have been a minute to restrict.
That makes sense. That makes sense in a lot of ways, Tenitra. I think that especially with you mentioning that is the one question that I had with Trae was, upon coming back, mm-hmm. is, can he find the balance to defer to the guy who's been having the hot hand while he was out? Can he defer to the guy? Can he put that, and I'm not saying, whatever, this and that about personality or ego or whatever, what have you, whatever word you want to use, insert that word here kind of thing. Fill in the blank on your own. Would he be okay with that? Now, it appeared that he was clearly okay with that in that particular situation. I don't know. Like, it looks like a little bit of maturity from him because he tried to get the ball to him, but it just wasn't in a position. I get it. Things happen. Sometimes you're going to fumble the ball, whatever. Sure. But a 6-game losing streak on the line, and not just against to any team, but against to that team, I think was a time that you do have to make that decision to say, you know what, first things first, let's focus on getting it into Jalen Johnson's hands. It'll be different if I didn't feel confident about Jalen Johnson's ball handling ability or being able to bring the ball up the floor. I get it. It was from a half court standpoint already,
Sure.
but ability to be able to create something on his own where you needed Trey. You didn't necessarily have to have Trey in that particular moment. I don't have the biggest gripes either way about that per se, but we've had more than enough instances so far this year where we've seen what Jalen Johnson can do with the ball in his hands as the primary guy.
Yeah.
And kind of going back to the point that I was making before, and I know we're kind of up against it. Wow, time moves fast when you're having fun, but there's nothing wrong with bringing Zachary Reed. How long did it take for us to bring DeAndre Hunter off the bench before we were able to see what he could do? And then all of a sudden we got rid of him. But before you know it, he jumped out there off the bench and started averaging 20. And next thing you know, he kind of looked like Nickeil Alexander-Walker all of a sudden. I just really think that that's the best. I think it's spot on. I'm having a conversation about, the start of the game. You're having a conversation about the end of the game. They've got to be able to put it together in between the ears and in between, both quarters.
Yeah, because it'd be nice if we could talk about a turning point where we actually saw the Hawks complete the comeback. Not so much, but we'll at least tell you how the Hawks put themselves in position to mount a comeback against the Knicks when we come back. This episode of our Hawks Postcast is brought to you by DoorDash. The season's heating up, and DoorDash has a way to keep fans in their bag the whole way through, whether you're watching the highlights, the tunnel fits, or just your favorite player. DoorDash makes the entire season more fun because every player has their bag. With DoorDash, fans have one too. DoorDash keeps your snacks stocked, your gear fresh, and your watch party vibes absolutely on point. Those late night interviews hit and suddenly you need chips at midnight. DoorDash is built exactly for that. If the group chat says pull up, DoorDash makes sure you show up prepared. Snacks, cups, even a phone charger for the friend who's always at 2%. And there are rights when your team stresses you out, or nights rather. So let DoorDash become your post-game therapy. Sometimes you just need dessert now. From tip-off to overtime, stay in your bag and order on DoorDash. Get snacks, drinks, gear, whatever gets you through the season, delivered right to your door. DoorDash, in your bag all season long. This episode of our Hawks Postcast is brought to you by Game Time. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. And with 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Game Time app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. With Game Time, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. So the seat view feature in a game changer. You literally see what the pitch looks like from your exact seat before you buy. And prices include fees up front, which you gotta love. No last second surprises at checkout, and alerts for teams and matches make it easy to grab tickets the moment they drop instead of missing out. So take the game work out or buying World Cup tickets, or the guesswork rather, every match, concert, or event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply, but again, download that app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off Game Time. So DeShaun, it was one of those games where, hey, we got excited towards the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter, because we saw the Hawks win points-wise, at least the third quarter, and we saw the Hawks win points-wise the fourth quarter as well, where literally they go down get it down to 3 from the 18-point deficit that had built up in this game. And all of a sudden, you're thinking to yourself, it might actually happen. So let's actually talk about that as the turning point.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
Yeah, DeShaun, you got to give the Hawks some credit, although it did not yield a win per se. But you do have to give the Hawks credit for being able to battle back around the 4:50 50 mark, the Hawks went on like a 9-0 run rather, and got it down to 3. And eventually they actually took a 1-point lead. But what did you see from the Hawks that was encouraging to you, just in terms of how they were able to climb out of that 18-point hole?
Well, the things that I have here on my handy dandy notebook that I thought was very key to winning the basketball game. The problem is just that it didn't happen at the beginning of the game when it needed to. Nonetheless, I think it was the ball protection. You didn't see the turnovers. You saw guys kind of care for it a little bit more. And the team tend to be playing a little bit more loose. There was a good balance between playing with some urgency and not playing overly emotional, knowing who's right in front of you in the game that you have to win, but also not trying to treat it as if it's the world championship, for crying out loud. I do feel like there was a sense of knowing that they were playing with a little bit of house money to a degree, knowing that they still had to be able to get a win. But there was an underdog mentality type of feel. And can you really blame them? Because to be honest with you, I really felt like as that home crowd kind of, got going, which felt like very much a home game for the New York Knicks, kind of played into the favor of the Atlanta Hawks because they play so much better when they're on the road, ironically and coincidentally enough, however that works out. But they were matching the intensity. And you saw them be able to convert on shots. I thought simply convert. You have to be able to convert on those shots. You see, Yeko Kongo out there pulling up for threes, making shots. He had a fantastic night tonight. I think 31 and 14. Beat Krejci started to get hot. Nikhil Alexander-Walker was popping in some threes as well. So you had guys that were hit. Asa Newell on top of that was starting to, kind of continue to show his consistency. I think it was a matter of matching the intensity and making shots, which I think is kind of obvious. Yes, getting some stops here and there. I didn't see many stops as I would like to have seen at that particular time, from a consistent standpoint. But I do think that between the ears is when it seems like the switch just kind of flipped for them. You turn that into being able to make some shots within that stretch and kind of turn the game around. If only they could. I feel like we're always saying if only they could play the third quarter like they do every other quarter. But on certain nights, tonight being one example, I wish they played every other quarter the way that they played the third quarter going into the fourth.
Yeah, and the fourth quarter too, because to your earlier point, the Hawks did a good job in that fourth quarter when they really, really mounted that comeback to protecting the ball. They only had 2 turnovers in the quarter, a couple of steals in the quarter. They were hanging in there with a team in the New York Knicks that's known for offensive rebounding and kind of limited them with their second chance point opportunities, but gave themselves chances to have second chance point opportunities. So yeah, I think the Hawks did a good job of doing exactly what needed to be done. Like you said, maybe not as many stops as you would have wanted to have in that fourth quarter. But again, this goes back to, but in order to erase an 18-point deficit, the Hawks did what they needed to do to get that done and put themselves in position to win. Now, unfortunately, we got to keep it real. They didn't win.
No.
So you have
We're not going to treat it like they did either.
Exactly. Yep. This will not be one of those everybody gets a trophy situation.
Moral victory.
Yep. At all. You lost. And so we still have to talk about that. Like, you did climb your way out of an 18-point hole, Hawks. You did find yourself up 1, Hawks, but you found yourself losing the game by 3.
That's right.
So what happened?
Tenitra, this team is starting to become more and more difficult to kind of figure out.
Yeah.
If I'm just being honest, they've got to find a way to. Again, we talked about the shakeup of the lineup and what have you, but I think that they're. I don't think that Trey is 100%. By far, not an excuse at all. Right. I don't know if with the minute restriction, if they're just still trying to find some time on when he should be on the floor, not just about how long that he should be on the floor. I think that Beat Krejci deserves some more time. We already talked about Asa Newell a little bit. I don't know what's going on with Luke Kennard and all of that, but as you know, It's outside of having to hit those perimeter shots. It's not about to get better. What are we talking about? 48 hours now from
Yeah.
this. They got the reigning, and they're pissed. They're upset. Like
Yeah.
they've taken some losses to the Spurs that just, yeah, they're really upset. So this is not an ideal time.
Uh,
I don't know, Tenitra. I'm a little bit at a loss for words, but I really think that what they need to be fixated on at this current time is really going to be starting with defense at the beginning of the game. The offense will come if
Yes.
you put yourself in position to where you can stay within the game with any team. It's only going to happen by being able to get stops. That needs to be the very first thing I'm drawing on the dry erase board.
Right, which to me also, I love the insertion of Asa Newell into the lineup. He always brings that good offense. And when you're trying to decide Asa Newell, Mo Gay, sometimes there are moments in time where you have to go offense. But on the same token, like you said, DeShaun, maybe establishing your defensive presence and bringing Mo Gay in at the beginning of the game to really kind of bang inside and set the tone with the Knicks, I think could have been helpful, if you will. But yeah, I think all in all, what we're saying and what we have said from the start of the show is that the lineups, whether it's the starting lineup, whether it's the mixing of the lineup throughout the course of a game, they're just kind of not working. And that's something that Quin Snyder is definitely going to have to look at it and figure out, because like you said, the Hawks have a stretch of games where they're going back on the road. And yes, they play better on the road, but nonetheless, they have a stretch of games that are going to be difficult starting in Oklahoma City. The Hawks Postcast is the #1 place to hang out after every game and is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So remember to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And for more on the Hawks, head over to Locked On Hawks with our guy, Brad Rowland. We'll see you next time.